Okay.
Hello, Sue. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce Sue Bishop, who's on screen now, I think. Well, she's on mine anyway. And Sue is a business lecturer, visiting lecturer. She does lots of industry projects with the BA Fashion course. And she's also an art historian and has had her own businesses and is a business coach. So everything to do with design and business and setting up your own business is she's one of the people that you can ask about that. So I think, Sue, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you.
Sue's going to do a presentation, and if you want to make notes or if you want to type into chat any questions that come up, I'll save them for the end. You're welcome to join us on screen, or you can use the chat function as you wish. So yeah, store up your questions as she does her presentation.
Thank you very much, Gail. I'll start off by introducing. I'll start off by introducing myself because I'm not sure that everybody knows me. So my original background, when I left school, I was a window dresser in a department store, and I've still got a real love for department stores. One of my pictures in the background is of a 1920s department store fashion show. And after that, I went into purchasing and supply for a long time before going into teaching and consultancy and being a trainer and working with large businesses like Asda and teaching them customer services and consumer behavior and a variety of other things. And I ran a network of small fashion designers and small fashion retailers from 2005 until about 2012, where I invited industry speakers to come and talk to small businesses, and I also ran a coaching network. So that's really my background. I worked for the London College of Fashion for a number of years as a director of their online fashion marketing course. So my professional life, I would say, is to do with marketing and business. I used to help businesses write business plans, and I was funded by the government to do that for quite a few years. So I'm going to share my screen, and if you've got questions, as Gail said, put them in the chat, or we can share them at the end. So this might be a bit dry, so I apologise in advance because I've got quite a lot of information to give you. So I wanted to start off by saying that, you know, it's very exciting starting your own business, but it is quite a risk. And so I want to first of all say it's a very courageous thing to do, to start your own business. And, you know, people get it wrong and they keep trying. And that's the kind of key, to be positive and optimistic. Ask people for help, because you can't possibly know all of the skills that you need to run your own businesses. And when I ran my network, what I discovered, the kind of key thing that I learned early on, is that everybody likes their own style of products, but what they find over a period of time is, to expand their business, they have to take on different types of products. And that was a key thing that I learned, and that all the retailers and designers learned, is that after 2 or 3 years they changed their product offer. So one of the things that people talk about all the time is entrepreneurs, and whether they're born or whether they're made. And it's one of those experiences that I've had for a very long time working with entrepreneurs. I would actually say that some people have got that instinct, whether they've learnt it from their parents or from their peers, or whether they are literally born with a more risk-taking approach. There's no doubt about it that a lot of entrepreneurs have got a kind of different focus and a different way of looking at things. They're ambitious. They're usually quite complex people. They've got lots of characteristics in terms of drive and energy. And that's why you quite often see partnerships, because you see people partnering with somebody who's got different skills to them. They're usually quite extrovert entrepreneurs. So I've worked with lots of entrepreneurs, and the only downside to being an entrepreneur is that quite often you burn out because you've got so much energy, you keep working on adrenaline, you see lots of new exciting things and opportunities, but you don't know when to take a rest. So if there's one piece of advice I can offer all of you, is make sure that you get some downtime along the way. So the ability to recognize opportunities is often to do with the fact that you are networking and talking to people and reading the media and keeping up to date and looking on Instagram and watching what's going on in the external marketplace, because things excuse me, change all the time, and you need to be prepared. Who would have thought that the whole economy would have been rocked by a pandemic? For those people that were ready to take up new opportunities, they will have won in this pandemic, rather than those that felt like they were completely out of control and didn't know what to do when the pandemic hit. So it's really important to make those social connections and those networks so that you're ready to take up new ideas. And having new ideas is part of the profile of having your own business, and a lot of that is to do with researching the market. That doesn't have to be a formal approach. It just means that you need to be in whatever sector you're in, the fashion sector or the homeware sector, that you need to be watching what other people are doing and all the time analyzing the market, understanding the different groups of customers and what they want, finding a way of being in tune with that through forums and networks, and making sure that you are constantly looking at different scenarios. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on in the morning. And talking to people, asking their opinions. But one of the key things is having enough money to start the business. And I will talk about, how to put that budget together later on in the talk. So understanding the scale of your business, understanding how big you want your business to be, and looking into the future. So all of those design ateliers that have been bought out by very large companies, they will at some point have made that choice that they want to expand their business from something that may have started at home, into something that's a much more global enterprise. So thinking about, where do you want your business to go in the future is quite useful, because then you will be looking for certain opportunities along the way. And the marketplace, as we know, is changing. And so we really need to think about what customers are doing differently as a result of the pandemic. These are some results from Shopify, a shopping behaviors market research report that you can find online. It's free, you can just download it. So, some of the things that have been discovered in this research is that, what we know is that people are buying more online, but that there is, certainly in fashion and design, there is likely to be a return to the marketplace and to retail once things have calmed down a bit, because people like to see things in the flesh, as it were, be able to look at the at the quality of something, to be able to look at the textures. One of the major things that's changed is that cash is no longer used by most people. It's really only cards. And of course, if you are on the receiving end of a business, you're paying a commission to use those cards. So you need to take that into account in terms of your profit margin. Delivery options, people's expectations about how quickly something will arrive on their doorstep and what route it will take. We've got lots of issues to do with buying goods from overseas because of Brexit and the duty that people will pay. That's still not completely clear and liable to change. So check before you either import or export goods. And, key things are that there are a lot of businesses now that are what we would call social entrepreneurs, who are people who want to make the world a better place and are putting their profits back into could be fair trade or the community or particular charities. And one example of that is a business that Gail and I worked with last year called The Fair Shop, who have actually closed their bricks and mortar store and have gone completely online. But the person who owns that business, Siobhan Wilson, has been a campaigner for slow fashion for many years, and very, very well received in the marketplace, is very well known in the slow fashion business. But her work as an entrepreneur, I would say, also took away a lot of the energy from the bricks and mortar business. So you have to be careful to be able to balance those things out. So in terms of small businesses, we one of the things that I've noticed is that not all of the return policies, for example, are clear with smaller businesses that go online, nor are the delivery expectations. And I recently had an experience with a portal who deals with boutiques, and their returns policy was very confusing, because although they're acting as the brand that you're purchasing from, they don't offer any returns policies. The return policies belong to the boutiques that they are acting on behalf of. So be clear about who you're actually dealing with, and how your affiliate marketing is going to work, because those middlemen, they maybe have got a bigger target audience, but they do need to represent you in the way that you want to be represented. And you can trial your retail opportunities as a designer through going through pop-up stores or organizing market stalls in other locations, vintage fashion stalls, for instance. Quite a lot of markets there were before lockdown. I'm not quite sure how many of those will come back. So you don't have to fix how you're going to distribute your goods straight away. You can make some innovations or imitations. And it's important to recognize who your competitors are, because you may want to imitate what they're doing, or you may want to learn lessons from them about the way not to work. But it's very important to know who your competitors are, and that's not always 100% clear, because you may be thinking that a competitor is somebody that sells exactly the same products as you, but actually the competitors are the people that are delivering products to the same market and the same group of customers. So it's not always like for like, but we can talk about that more later on. So one of the things I've been getting the students to do is to describe their collections in 200 words, and also to really explore what the brand looks like in terms of getting 6 words that imitate the brand. So also looking at what your vision is. So really being able to be clear about how your product is distinct and who your market is. So Dr. Martens were initially a £2 work boot worn by postmen and factory workers, but was picked up by the subculture of skinheads and Pete Townsend from the who made them famous originally. And they've now got a completely different marketplace, which is much more to do with being on trend and the different types of subcultures that they might, like the goths or whoever they might be selling to. So it's really important to understand what your brand stands for, and to be able to make some kind of pronouncement that you can use in your marketing materials. And it also guides how you talk about yourself as a brand. So now we just talk a little bit about what it means to set up a business. So historically, a bank would tell you that for the first 3 years, you may not make a profit. And I think it's important to make the distinction between profit and revenue. So income is not profit. Income is how much money you make that goes into the bank. Profit is when you've taken all of your expenses out of that income. And for a lot of young entrepreneurs who set up businesses, they don't actually pay themselves anything, or they pay themselves a very minimum wage. And so you also have to make that calculation in terms of your projections, because you're going to need capital to start that business and to maintain your cash flow. But if you're also trying to pay, you know, rent and mortgages and cars and all sorts of other things out of that income, you need to calculate all of that, because, you know, initially you may be doing lots of different jobs under the heading of owner, manager, or designer of your business. And some of those in the long term, you'll want other people to do. So your expectations in terms of what's likely to happen, both good and bad, are really important, because you don't want to get disappointed and demotivated because you've set your goals too high. So it's really important to plan at the beginning how much money you need to take, and therefore maybe what kind of distribution you need to employ in order to make your monthly income. And also to have some flexibility in that, because that's what we're talking about in terms of COVID. If you had no flexibility in your business, you would have been really in trouble after the first 2 or 3 months. So should you sell your own products or should you sell somebody else's? Well, of course, that depends on what kind of business you want to build. But, you know, the reality is that you can make your own products, but you might want to supplement your design business if you set up a shop by selling, for instance, somebody else's beauty products or somebody else's homeware products. You might like to have that mix of the offer that you might want to give to your customers, but you do have to think about price and distribution, and you do have to think about what the market can warrant. So and also to think about the fact that you need to, you know, cyclically you need to keep changing your products. So you might design something new for your collection every 6 months, but the other products that you stock also need to have a change. So you need to constantly be looking at product innovation, and that takes up quite a lot of energy. So you need to think about how much time you're going to spend sourcing products and textiles and all of the other things that go into your design business. And developing your brand will take time. Even if you found a celebrity tomorrow who's going to wear your designer clothes, you know, there is a lag in terms of the media. And so generally what the prediction is that it takes 18 months to build a brand. You can probably do that much quicker on social media, but it depends how large your target audience needs to be in order to bring in the income that you've forecasted. So the conversion rates online can be quite low. You know, Marks and Spencer's for the first few years were not making any money at all out of their website. It was there because everybody had a website, and, you know, to be a global brand, you needed to have a website. But you need to think about how you're going to make those sales if you want to go online and don't have what they call passing trade from a bricks and mortar store. So the conversion of a business, you know, in terms of converting products to sales, if you look at the bottom of this slide, it says the Resilient Retail Club. They did a research project with small fashion entrepreneurs, and what they found was that, you know, the conversion actually went down, and that's because they're not building innovation into their website, and they're not doing something new in order to keep that conversion rate up. They also found that the average order value was quite low. So it depends whether you've got a business that's selling lots of t-shirts at £25, or whether you're selling you know, silk dresses at £250, and you need to think about conversion rates as well as, you know, what your average sale might be. And the salaries that were taken from those businesses for some people were under £500 a month. Well, clearly that's not, you know, that's not long term, that's not sustainable. So you have to think about how you're going to build that up over a period of time. And a lot of that is to do with managing your finances and your resources, and being realistic about how much money you need to run the business. So if we think about the startup costs, Cambridge Satchel Company, which I'm sure you all know, you know, has been a very, very successful business, but they started off with £600, but they eventually raised £12 million on their expansion. So, you know, thinking about staying in the black, for example, is really important. If you borrow too much money, then you're constantly paying that money back, and you're not making any money, because it will come out of your expenses, and then there's no profit margin. So I don't know how much accounting any of you have done, but there is two types of cost: a fixed cost and a variable cost. A fixed cost is something that you buy once. So a computer would be a fixed cost. A variable cost would be something that you're paying for all the time: your mobile phone bill, or how much money you spend on textiles, cotton, you know, and all of the things that you're using in order to make your products. So looking forward in terms of doing a budget, and you need a realistic budget, you need to look at both fixed and variable costs. And many of the businesses that were surveyed by the Resilient Retail Club just started their business with £1,000 to £5,000, whilst 18% had no idea, which is a bit worrying, and 15% spent over 5,000 to 10,000. Now, obviously, if you're investing in machines, you're investing in a studio space, you know, your costs are going to go up immediately. If you're trying to do your business from home, and you start off very gradually, and then you keep ploughing your profits back into the business, then you've got a different kind of business model there. And if you are buying and selling stock as well as making your own stock, then quite a lot of your money will be tied up in that stock, which obviously you want to sell. And obviously there are various strategies for getting rid of stock if it hasn't sold within the season, but we can talk about that later on. So I said earlier on that you need to be clear about the things that you're good at, and you need to, what they call, outsource, or get somebody else to do the jobs that you're not good at. So for example, I have never attempted to do any of my web admin or design. That has always been outsourced to a designer. If you want really good photography for your website, sometimes it's better to outsource that and to get that paid for by a professional. If you're employing staff, whether you want to do your own accounting for that, you know, once you've got more than 2 or 3 staff, that becomes a job in itself. You might outsource production to a factory, either here or overseas. You might get somebody to come in and do your packing, and you might employ people to do your delivery. So you need to think about whether you're going to employ any of these outsourced skills, and if you are, to find out how much they're going to cost. It might be a good idea to find out how much they're going to cost anyway, just for future reference. And of course, marketing. Well, we can all think that we can carry on with our social media platforms and that we'll do it all ourselves, and that it may only take 3 hours a week of our time to do that. But the bigger our business grows, the more likely it is that you'll need to get somebody else to do that for you, because researching new media platforms, looking at what other people are doing, trying to compile your promotional activities might be something that you might find another student might do for you, and you can pay them for a few hours a week or something of that nature. Or you could become one of those students, in fact, doing that for somebody else. Email lists, there's been quite a big push during COVID of setting up webinars and podcasts and trying to grow their email lists so that you can mail out newsletters and new collection information. So it depends on the size of the business and the type of the business, whether or not whether you've got a dedicated marketing budget, or whether you just want to try and do as much as you can for as long as you can without having to pay anybody to do it. There used to be a discussion amongst marketing people that 15% of your income goes on marketing. Well, that's probably not true now, but the thing about social media is it does have a cost. It's your time. You're not doing what you need to be doing while you're doing that. And it can become quite obsessive and take you time away from thinking about making your product. So you do need to think about how you're going to do your marketing and to constantly try to attract new customers. So what was discovered through the Resilient Club's research and other things that I've read online is that the key things that small businesses need to get right is they need to find people who are going to talk about them, their influencers or their word of mouth marketing. Paid advertising does supplement your social media if you can find the right outlets for doing that. You can wholesale some of your products, sell them through somebody else in order to get a wider audience. Investing in your brand is really important. Investing in your own training and the training of the people that work for you. Looking at all the different possibilities in terms of sales channels. And building your brand based on the quality of your product, because you don't want to be spending all of your time with people returning goods that have broken or are not well made. And something called SEO, for those of you that have heard it, search engine optimization. So for your website or your online shop, you do need to invest in getting that as far up the Google list as you can by using the right keywords. I'm not going to spend a long time talking about that because that's actually a skill which you might want to pay your web designer for. And building emotional associations, because that's what really attracts your brand to individuals and to keeps them loyal, is the emotional associations you build between your brand and your customers. So in terms of business practices, you need to manage your resources effectively, whether that's making informed choices about your pricing strategies, looking after your stock, make sure that everything that you do is efficient. So clear branding messages, making sure that when you brief an agency or you brief an outside outsourcing company, you're absolutely clear about what you want. And if you want to invest in doing trade shows because you want to sell wholesale, really do your research, because most of the individuals that I know that have invested in using trade shows, it's been a very, very expensive exercise. And although you may make a lot of contacts, you've then got to spend a lot of time following up those contacts. So you've got to be ready to make the most out of those investments that you make. And support networks are really important. You can join forums, you can go on training and education webinars or other events online or offline, and that will give you some business contacts. The reason I've put this picture of Rodhoos there, it's just an example, is an organisation in Brighton that have got studios, not that they've got any vacant at the moment, where people can set up and make their products. And there are lots of these kind of studios around, and belonging to one of these kind of organizations also gives you access to, sometimes they run business seminars, and they will help the small businesses that are renting studios from them. So it's quite interesting to also research these kind of collectives that might give you exhibition space. They might give you a portal to sell through. There are lots of different business models of these kind of studios. So not only do we need all of those skills in order to make products and to produce them and to sell them, if we're going to merchandise them either in a pop-up shop or online or in a retail store, there are lots of other skills that we may not currently have experienced, for instance, buying or logistics or accounting. And you can either do short courses on these. Sometimes the London College of Fashion provides short courses on some of these skills, or you can find somebody else that will help you in your business. Don't try and do it all. It will take too much time, and it won't leave enough time for the creativity that you want and that drove you originally to have your design business. I just want to say a little bit about how overwhelming it can be to start your own business, and that it's you need to take small steps. And that's why I keep saying ask other people for their help, because feeling overwhelmed is quite normal and you will find a way around it. Could you switch your microphone off, please? There's some background noise. So you can learn a lot by looking at other businesses, reading case studies, finding out what went wrong for other businesses, not just what went right. And make sure that you've got somebody that you can go to ask for help, whether that be a mentor or some kind of forum that you can go to if you're feeling vulnerable. And don't dull your emotions, because you need the negative ones as well as the positive ones. And if you try to be a perfectionist, it will just prevent you from getting on with things, and then you will be disappointed in yourself. So try to find ways of limiting your stress, and really be clear about your the need to have time to kind of rest. And creative people often find that when they relax and have a rest, they're even more creative afterwards. So don't be too driven. Find the joy in what you're doing, and don't begin to see it as a drudge. So just a few more slides before questions then. So the kind of research that you need to think about is, who are your customers? Who are your competitors? What typifies a typical customer for your collections? What is your unique selling point? What makes you different from your competitors? It could be the types of styling, it could be the silhouette, it could be the type of textile, it could be your mix of colors, it could be that you're doing something very similar to somebody else, but that you're doing it through different sales channels or at a different pricing point. You know, it really depends on how you're looking at your business in terms of the gap in the marketplace. And as I mentioned before, scenario planning is something that is really important, and scenario planning in the way that I'm talking about it. I mean, large businesses literally look at scenarios all the time. You know, what would happen if we had a pandemic? What would happen if we had to pay duty to export overseas? What would happen, you know, if we had an earthquake? But what I'm talking about at the very simple format is, how much money am I likely to take in the next 4 quarters of my business? And to do a number of scenarios. If I only take this, what will happen? If I take that, what will happen? If I have a really bad month, what will happen? And that's about learning how to use Excel spreadsheets, and it's about literally putting in different scenarios. So if you sold all of your collection, what would happen? If you only sold half of your collection, what would happen? If you only sold a quarter of your collection, what would happen? And you need to look at a cash flow forecast that literally says month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, etc. Because when you look at your fixed and variable costs, they will come at different times. So it might be that all of your fixed costs, buying a computer, renting a studio, all of those other things, may come right at the very beginning, and you need some working capital in order to start the business, but your income won't start coming in for 3 months, because even if you sell it wholesale or you sell it, you know, your money will start to come in 2 or 3 months later. So how do you fund, you know, those first few months? And that makes a big difference in terms of your overall profit and cash flow, making sure that you've calculated all of that. So set your objectives, write some sort of business plan. When I first started my own business, my business plan was 3 pages long. That's it. I just said what I wanted to achieve. I looked at the financial side of it. I set myself some objectives. I, you know, explained in my 200 words what the business was. And I went to my bank manager. I don't know what the bank require you to do nowadays, because I haven't done that for a while. And, you know, join some networks, get your website set up, design a logo. Don't worry too much about it. Don't spend huge amounts of time, because it will change over time as you see your business differently. Set up your bank account, get an accounting system. It can just be a simple Excel spreadsheets to begin with, and design your selling system, however you're going to distribute your product. And I'm just going to finish up by saying that you can use your simple model, for those of you that have studied marketing, of price, place, promotion and product, to describe your business to yourself, so that you know exactly what you're doing. There's a bigger exploded diagram of that, looking at promotions and pricing strategies. You can find all of that information online if you haven't gone through that as part of your course. And thinking about when you're doing your pricing, that, you know, over time people will find your website or your social media. There'll be a small group of customers that you can rely on, who are innovators, who want to try something new. But it takes time to grow your business, and you need distribution strategies to help you to help you to do that. I'm going to leap over that. So think about how you're going to make your brand stand out, be original, put your personality into the brand if that's what you think will make you different, and get some messages, get some messages that you can rely on, that you can use on your Instagram or your Facebook or whatever it is. Be sincere, tell people, but make your business transparent. Get yourself a visual marketing strategy that people recognize, and position the brand against the competition. And lastly, I'm just going to say something about how you measure your success. So you might do it in clicks and followers. That's one way of looking at it, although it needs to also be in parallel with making sales, doesn't it, of some description. You can look at it in terms of how many customers you've got on your database, but again, you want to know what proportion of those are actually buying from you. You want to keep clarity on how much money you're making and how much of that is profit. You want to watch your cash flow to make sure that you've got enough money to pay next month's bills. Get feedback from your customers. You can use that on your website, but it's good to know that you're doing something that people appreciate. And make sure that the time and energy and money spent on marketing is bringing you customers, and it's not just making you feel good because people know that you're there. They're actually buying something from you. And my final slide, just to say, everybody's been talking since Prince Philip's death about the Prince's Trust, but there are awards and grants out there. You can also look for collaborations with other brands, which will help you ease your financial burden. Look for people that you can affiliate with, and make sure that you can get some PR exposure online, offline, wherever you can, so that people start to recognize your brand. I hope that's been useful. I'm happy to take questions on anything I've talked about, and anything else that I can help you with.
No questions. Thank you very much. I have to go. Thank you. Bye-bye. It's been great.
Thank you, Sue. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Are you doing business coaching at the moment, if there was a graduate that's watching that wanted to tap into your knowledge?
I am doing business coaching at the moment, and I'm also going to be part of Northbrook's mentoring scheme from October.
Do you want to put your contact details into chat, Susan?
Yeah.
Has anybody got any questions? Ask now. Or comments, feedback. I like the bit where you said don't dull your emotions, because you need the negatives as well as the positives. And I would say at this time, much more, the world's changed since I graduated, but if you wanted to set your own business up, you'd probably go the traditional route of going to the bank and borrowing money. But I've found that some of the students this year are selling really well on Etsy. I've got a student that's got some vintage fabrics that she's using to make dungarees and dungaree skirts sets and things like that. And she's selling to a little shop in the lanes, Juju, and she's got an Instagram account where she's selling more rapidly than she can make. So she's actually recruited some of the graduates to do the construction for her. So
Brilliant.
Yeah, she's ended up sort of, I think they call it bootstrapping your business, when you just start with absolutely nothing. And there's also companies that I think you hinted at it. There's a new sort of term that's come out in retail, which is drop ship, which is when you produce but somebody else advertises it on their platform. So it could be an Amazon, or it could be, I don't know, you know, one of the big retailers that's already got a following, like Boohoo, for example. But then they take I think, Sue, you might know more than me, but I think they take about 40%, or, you know, almost half of what the product is. So you have to cost that in, but you get the advertising through that company. So
yeah, but I think you need to have grown your brand first, because they're you know, the whole thing about the drop ship is that it's the two brands coming together, isn't it? The collaboration. And although you might be using a bigger brand, I think that they would probably insist on looking at the marketing before
they'd look at the supply chain, and it's often in big, large numbers. I was speaking to a factory in Thailand the other day that make, I think, 1,000 minimum, and then a factory yesterday had a 500 minimum. So what there needs to be, I would say that there's Let's Make It Here, which is a website that's got smaller factories in the UK, set up by the UKFT. I'll type it into chat if anybody's wanting small runs. Got anything in chat? Oh, here we go. We've got some questions. I'll type that in and I'll just read out a question. Sophie says to everyone, how much stock do you think is best to make when first starting the business?
Okay, well, that's a very interesting question. So, for example, if you were going to do a pop-up shop in the lanes, you would need enough stock to fill the shop and keep refilling it as you sell it. So you would, you know, literally go and measure the rails that you're going to put in the shop and say, how much stock do I need? If you're selling online, clearly you would need to make your collection, and you know, for some students you could actually say, you know, offer up a 2-week delivery, and you could make as you sell. It really depends on your distribution strategy. So do you have to have it there in a retail format that you hand over straight away? Is the expectation from somebody that buys online that it's going to arrive on their doorstep tomorrow morning? It depends what your promise is to your customers. So I can't answer that clearly. Gail, have you got any, do you make recommendations about that?
Well, I think I don't know what you're thinking about making, but I would test my market. I would make, and I'd have a platform on something like Instagram. I don't know who's asking the question, or what age group. If you're a millennial, they love selling to each other. There's a new breed of young people, of innovative designers that don't want to buy a big brand. They're actually buying from each other, and they're looking at each other's messaging. They're huge Instagrammers. Social media's taken over. So I would test your market. I'd make, I don't know what you're making. You're making scarves, dresses. I'd make 5 or 10. I'd get them shot, and I'd put them up on a platform and try and Facebook Marketplace. There's a lot of free platforms, eBay. Depop, I think, is a bit more of a, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't use the platform, it's more of a vintage, where you on sell vintage clothes rather than new. I don't know if anybody else can add to that, but that's something that students have been making money from. So yeah, I'd make some product and I'd test it, give it to people to wear, try and get an influencer to wear it, maybe connect with some people on Instagram that have that look. I don't know what it is you're designing, but my student who did these funky kind of she did these out of old sort of superhero duvet covers. It's really fun what she does. It's really bright. Her market is somebody that would go to a festival. It's very much kind of a VW kind of party, you know, it's that kind of customer. And she knew her customer, so she's selling to her network. So, you know, it's find people that are like you. I always, over the pandemic, much more than before, I joined a lot of sustainable fashion forums because that's my thing. And it's like, whatever is your thing, you join people that are like you, because there's always a crowd that's like you. So I joined a lot of LinkedIn groups and forums, and I got invited to speak. And yeah, just ended up doing sort of a book proposal from it, which is ongoing and quite slow. But yeah, it's amazing what you can get offered when you just start to message people or respond to something that they've posted that you like. You suddenly can build up a network. So yeah, just try and get people interested and make a few, shoot the product, try and sell it.
Okay, I'm just going to pick up on a couple of questions here. So,
There's some more questions. Okay.
starting a luxurious scarves business, should you work for a fashion company first? I think it's always a good idea to work for a fashion company and to find out how other people do things. It doesn't mean to say that you can't work for a fashion company and make luxury scarves and sell them. So I think that as much knowledge as you can get about how other people are working will either give you positives or negatives, and I think that it's a great way to learn. But somebody has also asked whether there are courses on social media marketing. There are lots of courses. There are webinars, there are free webinars, there are, if you search the web, you'll find all sorts of organizations offering information about social media marketing. Be interested.
So just add to that, I've just put join the business of fashion. It's not that expensive. If you're thinking of setting up your own business, you can join this business of fashion and you can trial it for £1 a month. And every week, I've just been invited to a summit next week. Tomorrow, I think I'm attending something that says, is our retail stores still relevant in this age, or something like that. So it's got a title. So there's lots of things that you can join in, and they have a jobs page. You can upload your CV and you can network. So business of fashion, if you're fashion or textiles, is amazing. And there's some free things as well. So yeah.
Gemma has asked, do you think that finding your lane is crucial to the start of a business? I'm not really, can you expand on that, Gemma? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. Or maybe you know, Gail?
So is it okay to develop? Yeah, I think she means finding
I saw.
Sorry?
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just mean like creatively. I still feel like I haven't found my lane, but like, how far do you leave it before like?
Well,
to make the business.
my lane has changed over and over again. You know, I mean, I would say that every few years, my lane has gone in a different direction. So don't wait for anything, because whatever your creative impulse is now, it'll be different in a couple of years' time. But that doesn't mean to say that you don't start on your lane now.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
It will never be set. The lady that we're working with, Elif Kose, who's got a business in Rottingdean. I've known Elif, I can't remember how many years now, a long time, but Elif has changed her lane. You know, every couple of years she's selling something different, and she's learning more about herself, more about what customers want, more about the type of customers that she wants to deal with. It just keeps changing, and actually that's the sign of a really healthy business.
Okay, thank you. Helps me quite a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, also just to add to that, we had a talk yesterday, I don't know if you were able to attend, with Kelsey Wright, who's a designer in industry, and she just she said that they can start a product. It's reasonably quick to market what she does, and she said they can literally start a project on a Monday, and then something comes out on Instagram on a Tuesday. So suddenly they're dealing with different fabrics, different pattern cutters, or different looks, because something's changed. All of a sudden a celebrity turns up to an event and everybody wants that particular dress, not the dress they designed on Monday, but something else has come out on Tuesday. And there is no planning, especially now. Everything's up in the air after the last 18 months. I actually think it's a really good time to start a business. I know that sounds ironic when there's not a lot of money around, but it's time for something new. We've got a little bit of a blank canvas and a pause where we can maybe be a bit brave. I'd say being brave is being a risk taker. I was speaking to Elif the other day, Sue just mentioned her, and I said to her, do you consider yourself to be a risk taker? And she said, yes, absolutely. And she is an entrepreneur. And I think that's where some people who take, I would say I'm not a risk taker, but I would take a calculated risk if I knew that I had some backup plan. I'm just not that sort of person that would put my house on the market to start a business that might fail. And I think it's good to recognise what you are and what you're comfortable with risking or not. But Elif, she would risk it all. She'd have just a can of beans in the cupboard and she'd, you know, buy a new store or something. She's different to me, and that's okay. But so just find what you're comfortable with and take a calculated risk, but start. I think the best thing, if you want to do it, start it and let it inform you. You can always change direction as things develop. You have to be brave and let your, those emotions that don't dull your emotions has actually stayed with me. I'm going to adopt that, Sue, if you don't mind.